Did you know that a Roman emperor once declared full-on war against the ocean, made his soldiers whip the waves like naughty kids, and then collected seashells as war trophies? Yeah, humanity has been making zero-sense decisions since forever. And today I've got 111 of the absolute dumbest, most brain-melting history facts that will leave you yelling, "What the heck?" at your screen. From presidents fighting duels to entire countries losing wars to birds, these are so ridiculously stupid they'll have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the past. Stick around till the end because number 61 is pure insanity. Smash that like button. If you're already laughing, drop a comment with the dumbest fact you know. Hit subscribe so you never miss this kind of chaos. And let's dive into the dumbest history lesson you'll ever love. 1. Roman Emperor Caligula once decided the ocean had disrespected him, which is a bold accusation to make against water. During a campaign near the coast, he announced war on the sea god Neptune and ordered Roman soldiers to march to the shoreline like it was a normal enemy. The men stood there in armor, whipping waves as if the ocean could feel shame. Caligula then commanded them to collect seashells as official spoils of war, proof Rome had won. Courtiers nodded politely, generals stayed silent, and the empire pretended this was strategy. Somewhere in Rome, accountants probably logged shells as military victories and moved on. 2. Napoleon Bonaparte conquered Europe, terrified kings, and rewrote maps. But one afternoon he was defeated by rabbits. At a hunting event arranged for his entertainment, aides released hundreds of supposedly tame rabbits for an easy show of dominance. Instead of running away, the rabbits charged him with enthusiasm and zero fear. They climbed his boots, swarmed his legs, and ignored shouted orders like seasoned rebels. Officers tried to help, but the rabbits kept coming. Napoleon retreated to his carriage, waving them off, while history's greatest general lost a battle to fluffy determination. Witnesses later laughed nervously and agreed this was not covered in military manuals. 3. Andrew Jackson's funeral was supposed to be a solemn national moment, honoring a tough American president. But his parrot had other plans. The bird, raised in the White House, had spent years absorbing Jackson's vocabulary, which was aggressive even by frontier standards. When mourners gathered, including politicians and military leaders, the parrot began loudly swearing without pause. Gasps spread through the room as curse after curse echoed around the ceremony. Clergy froze. Family members panicked. Officials eventually removed the bird, which reportedly kept yelling from outside. Jackson's legacy of chaos extended beyond death, proving even his pets refused to follow decorum. 4. In 1184, powerful nobles of the Holy Roman Empire gathered for what they assumed would be a normal political meeting, which already sounds dangerous. The room was crowded with lords, knights, and advisors arguing loudly when the wooden floor suddenly collapsed. Instead of falling into another chamber, dozens of men plunged directly into a massive latrine pit underneath. Heavy armor dragged many under instantly. Others drowned in human waste while shouting for help. Only a few survived by clinging to beams. The empire lost influential leaders in seconds. Medieval politics quite literally collapsed into a toilet, ending careers in the worst possible way. 5. Ancient Egyptian pyramid workers were not paid in gold or praise but in massive amounts of beer. Records show laborers received up to 5 liters a day, which explains how anyone agreed to drag giant stones across the desert. This was not a bonus, but a standard wage, issued by administrators who understood morale. Workers drank beer for hydration, calories, and probably emotional survival. Imagine hauling limestone blocks under the sun while being promised beer instead of money. Supervisors tracked beer rations carefully, proving ancient payroll departments already existed. The pyramids may stand as wonders, but they were built on hops, barley, and buzzed enthusiasm. 6. King Charles VI of France was convinced his body was made entirely of glass, which caused understandable anxiety. He feared sudden movements, sharp words, or unexpected hugs might shatter him. To cope, he wore reinforced clothing and had iron rods sewn into his garments for protection. Servants were ordered to handle him gently and announce themselves slowly. Court life continued while everyone pretended the king might explode like a dropped wine glass. This belief lasted for years and influenced political decisions. France was governed by a man avoiding chairs. The monarchy survived, but logic quietly left the building during his reign. 7. The shortest war in history occurred in 1896 between Britain and Zanzibar, proving paperwork can outlast battles. After a disputed succession, Britain demanded the new sultan step down. He refused, fortified his palace, and prepared for conflict. British warships opened fire at 9 a.m. Within minutes, the palace was destroyed, the sultan fled, and the defending artillery was silenced. By 9:38 a.m., the war officially ended. Zanzibar suffered hundreds of casualties. Britain lost one injured sailor. Diplomatic cables took longer to read than the entire war lasted. It remains history's fastest example of empire versus optimism. 8. Albert Einstein is remembered for bending space and time, not for rejecting political power, but he did exactly that. In 1952, Israel offered him the presidency, believing his intellect symbolized national values. Einstein was honored but declined politely. He explained he lacked experience dealing with people and politics, which was refreshingly honest. Friends said he preferred equations over elections. Imagine cabinet meetings led by someone asking for quiet to think. The offer alone shocked the world. A theoretical physicist nearly became a head of state, proving history occasionally considers ideas so strange even Einstein himself steps away from them. 9. In 1959, voters in São Paulo elected a rhinoceros named Cacareco to city council. The election was a protest against corrupt politicians, and citizens made their feelings clear with over 100,000 votes. Cacareco lived in a zoo and offered no speeches, no policies, and no scandals. Supporters argued that at least the rhino could not lie. Officials invalidated the election, but the message landed hard. Newspapers covered the story worldwide. A literal animal outperformed every human candidate. Democracy survived, but pride did not. Somewhere, a rhinoceros became a symbol of civic disappointment and honesty. 10. In 1907, French waiters went on strike for higher wages, better hours, and one very specific demand. They wanted the legal right to grow mustaches. Restaurant owners preferred clean-shaven staff, believing facial hair looked unprofessional. Waiters disagreed and walked out en masse, shutting down cafes across France. The public supported them because nothing frightens a nation like coffee delays. Eventually, the strike succeeded, and mustaches returned to dining rooms as symbols of victory. History often remembers revolutions and wars, but sometimes progress arrives wearing an apron, holding a tray, and demanding the freedom to grow facial hair. 11. Lord Byron arrived at Cambridge University ready to study poetry, philosophy, and rebellion, but housing rules immediately offended him. Dogs were banned from dorms, which Byron found unacceptable. Instead of complying, he adopted a full-grown bear and kept it in his rooms. There was no rule against bears, so administrators could do nothing. Students visited to see the animal, professors complained quietly, and Byron enjoyed every second of it. The bear became a campus celebrity and a living loophole. British higher education briefly included a poet and his pet bear, proving rule makers never anticipate creative defiance. 12. The inventor of roller skates decided the best way to introduce his creation was during a fancy party, which was already a terrible plan. He strapped on the skates, rolled confidently into the room, and immediately lost control. Unable to stop or turn, he crashed straight into a massive mirror worth thousands. Guests screamed, glass shattered, and his invention debuted as a financial disaster. Instead of applause, there was silence and broken decor. Roller skates eventually became popular, but their first appearance involved embarrassment and property damage. Innovation often begins with confidence, speed, and a mirror that did nothing wrong. 13. Tug of war was once an official Olympic sport, which feels like something invented during a lunch break. From 1900 to 1920, athletes trained seriously to pull ropes harder than other nations. Teams wore uniforms, crowds cheered, and medals were awarded for extreme teamwork and grip strength. Nations argued over technique like it was fencing or gymnastics. Eventually, organizers quietly removed it, possibly realizing recess games should stay in schoolyards. Olympic history includes track stars, swimmers, and people whose main skill was not letting go. Somewhere, former champions explained their gold medals and watched conversations end abruptly. 14. British military engineers solved many battlefield problems but focused intensely on one priority. Since World War II, British tanks have been equipped with boiling water systems so crews can make tea during combat. This was not optional comfort but a morale requirement. Soldiers could endure chaos, noise, and danger as long as tea remained available. Other armies prioritized armor and firepower. Britain prioritized kettles. Manuals explained proper use. Commanders approved it. History shows tanks rolling through war zones with tea brewing inside. Military superiority sometimes depends less on strategy and more on hot beverages delivered under pressure. 15. In the 18th century, pineapples were so rare and expensive, they became status symbols instead of food. Wealthy hosts would rent a pineapple for parties, place it on the table, and never eat it. Guests admired it like a celebrity. The fruit might be reused for multiple events until it finally rotted. Eating it was considered wasteful. Pineapples appeared in portraits and architecture as symbols of power. Imagine flexing wealth by borrowing produce. Today, pineapples sit ignored in grocery stores. History briefly decided fruit was luxury decor, proving human priorities become unhinged when scarcity meets ego. 16. Andrew Jackson survived an assassination attempt that felt scripted by fate. An attacker approached him at close range and fired a pistol. It misfired. The man pulled a second pistol. It also misfired. Jackson, furious and very much alive, attacked the would-be assassin with his cane while bystanders intervened. Both pistols were later tested and worked fine, adding mystery to the event. Jackson walked away unharmed and angrier than before. Americans debated divine protection or pure luck. History recorded a president who could not be shot but absolutely could not calm down afterward. 17. The French guillotine is often associated with ancient history, but its last use was in 1977. That same year, Star Wars premiered in theaters. While audiences watched spaceships and lasers, France executed a man using a blade invented centuries earlier. The contrast is unsettling. One world imagined the future, another finished medieval justice. The guillotine remained legal until 1981, meaning disco, color television, and futuristic cinema existed alongside public beheading laws. History rarely moves at one speed. Sometimes it sprints forward while dragging a rusty blade behind it, hoping no one notices the overlap. 18. Woolly mammoths did not vanish as early as people assume. Small populations were still alive when the pyramids of Giza were being built. That means mammoths walked the earth while humans engineered massive stone monuments. The mental image is ridiculous. A hairy elephant roaming around while people argued about geometry and labor schedules. These mammoths lived on isolated islands, slowly dwindling while civilization rose elsewhere. History textbooks separate eras neatly, but reality overlaps messily. Ancient humans could have told stories about mammoths while pyramids rose, proving timelines are suggestions, not rules, and prehistory sometimes overstays its welcome. 19. Victorians had a strange relationship with death that involved photography and optimism. Families posed deceased relatives upright, eyes open or painted on, dressed for portraits. These images were cherished keepsakes, not horror displays. Photographers used stands to hold bodies in lifelike positions. Children were photographed next to dead siblings like nothing was wrong. It was considered loving and respectful. Today it feels deeply unsettling. At the time, it was memory preservation. History reminds us that normal changes dramatically. What one era frames and hangs proudly, another era refuses to look at twice. 20. During a medieval invasion attempt, a Welsh woman captured 12 drunk French soldiers by herself using a pitchfork. The men had wandered away from their unit and underestimated a local civilian. She herded them like animals, threatened them relentlessly, and marched them into custody. Authorities were stunned. The soldiers were embarrassed. The woman became a legend. No elaborate trap, no backup, just confidence in farming equipment. Military strategy failed because of alcohol and arrogance. History often celebrates generals, but sometimes it belongs to someone with no rank, no armor, and absolutely no patience for invading idiots. 21. In the 13th century, the Pope became convinced cats were agents of Satan, which was unfortunate for both cats and everyone else. A papal order encouraged mass extermination of cats across parts of Europe. People complied enthusiastically, killing cats in huge numbers to appear faithful. With cats gone, rats exploded in population. Rats carried fleas, fleas carried disease. This decision likely helped pave the way for the Black Death. Millions died because medieval leadership picked the wrong villain. History shows how superstition mixed with authority can turn pest control into catastrophe. Cats did nothing wrong, and humanity paid the price. 22. Roman gladiators were admired like celebrities, but their blood was treated like medicine. Romans believed drinking gladiator blood could cure epilepsy and other conditions. After matches, spectators rushed to collect it while it was still warm. Doctors endorsed it, vendors sold it. This was considered advanced medicine. The idea was that a fighter's strength transferred through blood. Modern science strongly disagrees. Gladiators survived combat only to become ingredients. History's healthcare system involved violence, superstition, and poor hygiene. When people say ancient Rome was advanced, they rarely mention that medical advice once included drinking a stranger's blood in public arenas. 23. President Lyndon B. Johnson believed productivity should never stop, including in the bathroom. He regularly conducted meetings while sitting on the toilet, summoning aides to stand nearby. Conversations continued. Eye contact was unavoidable. Staff learned quickly not to question it. Johnson believed this showed power and efficiency. Aides described it as deeply uncomfortable. Decisions were discussed while toilets flushed. History records major, political moments unfolding in restrooms. Leadership style varies across generations, but few presidents turned bathroom breaks into mandatory attendance events. Johnson left many legacies. For his staff, the most unforgettable involved plumbing and forced professionalism. 24. In medieval England, a monkey was executed as a French spy. Locals captured the animal near a military fort and noticed it wore clothing and made strange noises. Because it did not speak English, they assumed it was French. During wartime hysteria, logic was optional. The monkey was put on trial and hanged. No one questioned the absence of evidence. History recorded this as a legitimate counterintelligence operation. Fear overruled reason completely. Somewhere, officials congratulated themselves. This story survives as proof that paranoia can weaponize ignorance and that wartime justice sometimes targets the least qualified suspect imaginable. 25. In 1518, the city of Strasbourg experienced the dancing plague, which sounds fun until people started dying. Hundreds began dancing uncontrollably in the streets for days. Musicians were hired to help them dance it out, which made things worse. People collapsed from exhaustion, strokes, and heart attacks. Authorities had no idea what to do. Theories ranged from divine punishment to bad bread. No clear explanation exists. Entire crowds danced against their will. History includes wars, plagues, and moments when a city collectively lost control of its legs and paid the price. 26. Ancient Greeks mocked men who wore trousers, considering them unmanly and ridiculous. Trousers were associated with foreigners and barbarians, especially Persians. Greek men preferred tunics and exposed legs, believing trousers showed weakness. Philosophers wrote insults about pants. Soldiers joked about enemies hiding behind fabric. Today, trousers are universal, but history once judged clothing as a moral issue. Imagine being shamed for wearing pants. Cultural norms are temporary. What one civilization laughs at, another mass produces. Greece gave the world democracy, philosophy, and public ridicule for leg coverage, proving progress and pettiness often coexist. 27. Pepsi once briefly became one of the world's largest naval powers. When the Soviet Union could not pay for Pepsi syrup in cash, it offered military hardware instead. Pepsi accepted submarines, destroyers, and ships, instantly giving the soda company a navy larger than some countries. Executives quickly sold the fleet for scrap, realizing soda distribution and naval warfare do not mix well. For a moment, a soft drink company technically owned nuclear-capable vessels. Capitalism peaked briefly. History records a time when global politics resulted in cola-flavored diplomacy and accidental maritime dominance. 28. During World War II, the first bombs dropped on Berlin, killed the city's only zoo elephant. The raid caused limited military damage, but wiped out a beloved animal. Propaganda struggled to explain the loss. Civilians were shaken by the strange symbolism. War often produces random tragedies unrelated to strategy. History remembers battles and generals, but also includes moments where chaos strikes something entirely uninvolved. That elephant represented innocence caught between nations. Sometimes the first casualty is not a soldier or building, but something peaceful, reminding everyone that war destroys more than targets. 29. Cleopatra is often imagined as ancient even by ancient standards, but she lived closer to the invention of the iPhone than to the construction of the Great Pyramid. The pyramids were already over 2,000 years old during her lifetime. Cleopatra lived in a world with libraries, complex politics, and Roman influence. The timeline surprises people because history compresses eras unfairly. She feels prehistoric but was not. The pyramids were already tourist attractions. Perspective matters. Time does not separate neatly. History humbles assumptions and reminds modern audiences that what feels ancient often had its own ancient past. 30. Roman Emperor Caligula did not stop at fighting the ocean. He reportedly appointed his horse as a senator. The horse had a marble stall, jeweled collar, and attendants. Some historians argue it was satire. Others believe it was a threat to humiliate the Senate. Either way, Rome tolerated it. Laws were not passed by the horse, but the message landed. Power had become performance. Leadership blurred into spectacle. When a civilization accepts a horse in government without revolt, something has shifted. History remembers Caligula as madness incarnate, but the silence around him was equally loud. 31. Oxford University was already teaching students before the Aztec Empire even existed. Classes were happening in England while future Aztec founders had not yet settled Tenochtitlan. This fact breaks brains because stone pyramids feel older than lecture halls. Oxford students complained about exams centuries before human sacrifice rituals began in Mexico. Timelines overlap in uncomfortable ways. Civilization does not advance in straight lines. While one culture built libraries, another had not started yet. History often lies by implication. Something that feels ancient may be relatively young, while something boring like a university quietly outlives empires without anyone noticing. 32. In 1919, Boston was hit by a disaster no one could outrun. A massive storage tank burst and released a 15-foot wave of molasses into the streets. The syrup moved fast enough to knock over buildings, trap horses, and drown people. 21 died. Rescue workers struggled because everything stuck. Survivors said the city smelled sweet for decades. Imagine being taken out by pancake topping. History usually warns about floods and fires, not breakfast condiments. Boston learned the hard way that industrial food storage can be just as deadly as weapons when physics and poor engineering collide. 33. George Washington never had wooden teeth despite what cartoons say. His dentures were made from human teeth, including teeth taken from enslaved people. Records show payments for teeth and dental work. Ivory and metal were also used. The dentures were uncomfortable and caused him pain. Smiling portraits were rare for a reason. America's first president carried slavery quite literally in his mouth. History prefers simplified myths, but reality is more disturbing. This fact forces a harder look at revered figures. Founding legends often gloss over uncomfortable truths hidden behind polite paintings and carefully chosen stories. 34. In 1908, organizers planned a car race from New York to Paris that included crossing the frozen Bering Strait. The problem was the ice had melted thousands of years earlier. No one checked. Teams set off anyway, improvising routes when reality intervened. Cars broke down constantly. Drivers bribed officials, shipped vehicles secretly, and argued endlessly. The race turned into chaos disguised as innovation. Newspapers followed every failure. History remembers ambition more than planning. Sometimes humans assume geography will cooperate out of optimism alone. It does not. Maps matter, especially when oceans refuse to freeze on command. 35. French cavalry once captured an entire Dutch fleet by charging it on horseback. The ships were frozen in harbor during winter. Soldiers simply rowed across the ice and demanded surrender. The sailors complied, confused and humiliated. Naval power meant nothing without water. History rarely accounts for weather-humiliating technology. Cannons pointed uselessly outward while horses approached. This remains one of the strangest victories ever recorded. Strategy met climate and won accidentally. It is difficult to look intimidating as a navy when your ships are stuck and surrounded by men wearing boots instead of sails. 36. The Liberty Bell is famous for freedom and symbolism, but it contains a spelling error. The word Pennsylvania is spelled Pennsylvania. At the time, spelling was inconsistent, but this error lives forever on a national icon. Millions admire it without noticing. History carved a typo into bronze and refused to fix it. The bell cracked, but the spelling stayed. America's symbol of liberty includes a permanent mistake, which feels appropriate. Nations are built imperfectly. Even foundational artifacts contain errors that future generations accept as tradition rather than flaw. 37. Thomas Jefferson kept pet bear cubs at the White House. They were gifts from an explorer and lived on the grounds briefly. Visitors reportedly encountered bears wandering near political meetings. Security was minimal. The president saw no issue. Early America was less formal and far more dangerous. Imagine negotiating policy while dodging wildlife. The bears were eventually sent elsewhere, but the moment existed. History shows leadership once operated without fences, protocols, or common sense. The executive mansion briefly doubled as a zoo, proving presidential life once involved fewer press briefings and more unpredictable animals. 38. During the Cold War, the United States planned psychological warfare using condoms. The idea was to drop extra-large condoms labeled medium over Soviet territory. The goal was to intimidate and demoralize by implication. It never happened, but the plan was real. Bureaucrats discussed it seriously. Strategy meetings occurred. History's arms race included weapons, propaganda, and petty insults scaled to national levels. Even global tension could not suppress childish creativity. This plan shows how fear and ego distort priorities. Sometimes the Cold War was less about ideology and more about who could insult the other side more creatively. 39. The Boston Strangler was accidentally honored by the Massachusetts legislature. A resolution praising a community member with the same name was read aloud without proper vetting. The real criminal was already notorious. The mistake caused embarrassment and outrage. Officials scrambled to correct it. Paperwork failed basic awareness. History includes moments where government accidentally congratulates serial killers. Bureaucracy does not always pause for context. This incident remains a reminder that titles and names require attention. Even formal institutions occasionally move so fast they honor the wrong person entirely. 40. King Tutankhamun's parents were likely siblings, which explains many of his health problems. Royal bloodlines prioritized purity over biology. Tut suffered deformities, illness, and genetic disorders. He ruled briefly and died young. His golden tomb masked a fragile body. History romanticizes pharaohs, but reality involved severe consequences of royal inbreeding. The crown came at a cost paid in pain. Ancient power structures valued lineage above survival. Tut became famous not for ruling, but for dying intact. His life demonstrates how obsession with bloodlines weakens empires from the inside. 41. Victorians believed consuming tiny doses of poison could improve beauty, so arsenic wafers became fashionable. Advertisements promised clearer skin, brighter eyes, and a healthy glow. People ate them daily, ignoring side effects like hair loss, organ failure, and death. Doctors warned against it, but trends mattered more. Some users became addicted because stopping caused withdrawal symptoms. Beauty culture overruled survival instincts. History shows dangerous standards are not new. People willingly poisoned themselves for aesthetics long before filters and influencers. The Victorian era looked refined on the surface, but underneath it was quietly toxic, powdered, and marketed as self-improvement. 42. To prepare for D-Day, the United Kingdom asked citizens to mail in postcards and vacation photos of the French coast. These casual tourist images were analyzed to study beaches, tides, and terrain. Families unknowingly contributed to one of history's most important military operations using souvenirs. Intelligence agencies pieced together invasion plans from holiday memories. War planning involved flip-flops and sandcastles. History often credits generals and spies, but ordinary people holding cameras helped shape the outcome. The Normandy invasion relied partly on postcards sitting in drawers, proving even leisure can accidentally become classified intelligence. 43. Abraham Lincoln stored important documents inside his tall stovepipe hat. The hat was not just fashion. It functioned as a mobile filing cabinet. Letters, notes, and speeches were folded inside for safekeeping. Staff knew to check the hat for paperwork. Lincoln trusted it more than desks. During a time of war and chaos, organization came from headwear. History remembers the hat as iconic, but not its purpose. The president carried national secrets above his head, proving multitasking existed before smartphones. Leadership once involved managing a country and a hat full of documents simultaneously. 44. Pythagoras, famous for triangles, also banned his followers from eating beans. He believed beans trapped human souls or caused moral weakness. His cult took the rules seriously. According to legend, Pythagoras died while fleeing attackers because he refused to cross a bean field. He chose death over legumes. Mathematics advanced, but logic stopped there. History's greatest thinkers often held bizarre beliefs alongside brilliance. The same mind that unlocked geometry feared produce. This contradiction reminds audiences that intelligence does not guarantee rationality. Sometimes genius runs directly into a bean field and refuses to continue. 45. Australia fought a war against emus and lost. In 1932, soldiers were deployed to protect farms from massive emu populations. Armed with machine guns, they expected quick success. The emus outran bullets, scattered efficiently, and caused more damage. Equipment jammed, ammunition ran out. The operation failed. Farmers stayed angry. The government quietly ended the campaign. History officially records this as a military embarrassment. Nature defeated modern weapons using speed and chaos. Australia learned that large birds with attitude do not respect authority, planning, or national pride. 46. A wrestler once won an Olympic match after dying mid-competition. During the 1912 Olympics, an athlete collapsed and died after throwing his opponent. Officials ruled the opponent lost because he could not revive the winner within the time limit. The dead man was declared champion. His body received the medal. Rules were followed exactly. Logic was not consulted. History includes moments where bureaucracy overrides reality completely. The Olympics celebrate human strength, but this event highlighted rigid structure. A corpse technically won gold, proving regulations sometimes ignore basic human conditions entirely. 47. Joseph Stalin suffered a stroke and lay incapacitated for hours because his guards were too afraid to enter his room. They feared punishment more than concern. Orders were unclear. Silence meant danger. By the time help arrived, damage was severe. Stalin eventually died days later. His regime had trained people to hesitate instead of act. History shows how absolute power creates fatal paralysis. Loyalty replaced judgment. Fear outlived reason. The man who ruled through terror was undone by it. Even dictators depend on others, and when fear governs behavior, no one moves until it is too late. 48. The Vatican once contained a bathroom decorated with explicit erotic art painted by Raphael. This private chamber featured sexual imagery meant for elite audiences, not worship. It existed within the same walls as sacred rituals. Later generations quietly covered it up. History rarely mentions this contradiction. The Church publicly preached morality while privately commissioning explicit art. Power allowed exceptions. This bathroom proves institutions contain multitudes. Sacred and scandalous often share hallways. When history claims purity, it usually hides inconvenient rooms behind locked doors and hopes no one checks the walls closely. 49. After Albert Einstein died, the pathologist who performed his autopsy stole his brain. He kept it in jars for decades, showing pieces to researchers and acquaintances. Einstein had not given clear permission. His family eventually agreed reluctantly. The brain traveled across states like a science exhibit. History accepted this quietly. One of humanity's greatest minds became a preserved curiosity. Genius did not guarantee dignity after death. The story feels absurd and invasive. Even legends lose control eventually. Einstein reshaped physics but could not stop someone from literally walking away with his brain. 50. The first alarm clock ever invented could only ring at one time. 4 a.m. It had no flexibility. The inventor designed it specifically to wake himself. Anyone else was out of luck. There was no snooze, no adjustment, and no mercy. History's earliest productivity tool assumed everyone shared the same suffering schedule. Technology often begins selfishly. This clock existed solely to ruin one man's mornings. Humanity later improved it, but the origin was brutal. Progress sometimes starts with personal inconvenience exported unwillingly to the rest of society. 51. In ancient Rome, fathers had absolute legal power over their children, including the right to sell or kill them. This authority was called patria potestas and was socially accepted. A father could sell a son into slavery multiple times and still reclaim him. Children were considered property before people. Society trusted fathers to decide life and death without oversight. History often praises Roman law as advanced, but this rule exposes its brutality. Family bonds existed alongside legalized cruelty. Civilization progressed unevenly. Rome built roads and aqueducts, while legally allowing parents to erase their own children without consequence. 52. A Chinese pirate queen named Qing Shi commanded a fleet of over 80,000 sailors and more than 1,500 ships. She enforced strict rules. Disobedience meant execution. Loot was shared fairly. Sexual assault was punishable by death. Governments feared her. Navies failed to stop her. Eventually, she negotiated retirement on her own terms and lived comfortably. History rarely highlights female pirates, but she was the most successful of all. While empires struggled, she ran a disciplined organization on the sea. Leadership, fear, and negotiation allowed her to retire undefeated, which almost no pirate managed. 53. The inventor of the frisbee became a frisbee after death. His ashes were molded into actual flying discs. This was not a metaphor. He requested it. People literally threw him around parks. History includes many strange memorials, but this one reaches new levels. Innovation followed him beyond life. What began as a toy ended as a burial method. Mourning became recreational. It sounds disrespectful, but it was intentional. Legacy took flight. The idea of being tossed casually forever unsettles most people. For him, it was immortality through plastic and poor aerodynamics. 54. In 1858, London experienced the Great Stink, when sewage overwhelmed the River Thames. Heat intensified the smell until it invaded Parliament. Lawmakers gagged, soaked curtains in chemicals, and considered fleeing the city. The stench forced sanitation reform because discomfort finally outweighed denial. Disease had already killed thousands, but smell triggered action. History shows policy often changes only when leaders personally suffer. The Great Stink cleaned London not through science but disgust. Infrastructure improved because noses demanded it. Sometimes progress begins not with compassion, but with unbearable odor seeping into elite spaces. 55. Samurai and Abraham Lincoln technically lived at the same time. Early fax technology also existed during this overlap. That means, in theory, a samurai could have sent a fax to the White House. History rarely aligns images like this. Swords, top hats, and early machines shared a brief window. Timelines feel separate, but reality overlaps strangely. The modern world emerged unevenly. Some people wore armor while others used telegraphs. This fact collapses mental categories. Progress does not replace the past instantly. It stacks eras together awkwardly until someone notices the absurd contrast. 56. During World War I, opposing soldiers sometimes played tug-of-war across no man's land. Instead of bullets, they pulled ropes between trenches. Temporary truces formed spontaneously. Officers hated it. Humanity briefly overpowered orders. These moments ended quickly, but they happened. History records war as constant violence, but people occasionally paused to act human. Games replaced gunfire for minutes. The contrast is haunting. Men trained to kill chose competition instead. These brief connections remind audiences that conflict involves individuals trapped inside systems. Even in hellish conditions, people still tried to remember normal life. 57. The CIA once tried to assassinate Fidel Castro using an exploding cigar. This plan was discussed seriously. Engineers designed it. Officials approved it. The idea assumed Castro would smoke it publicly. History's intelligence agencies sometimes leaned toward cartoon logic. Other plans involved poison wetsuits and contaminated pens. None succeeded. Castro outlived them all. These plots reveal desperation disguised as strategy. Global politics occasionally resemble slapstick. When power fails, imagination runs wild. The exploding cigar remains one of the most infamous examples of Cold War absurdity dressed as national security. 58. Oxford University taught students for centuries before the first university in the Americas existed. Education flourished in Europe while entire continents lacked institutions by that definition. The age gap feels wrong. Universities seem modern, but some are ancient. Students complained about lectures long before modern nations formed. History stretches academic boredom across time. While empires rose and fell, Oxford kept assigning essays. This continuity is unsettling. Knowledge outlives politics. Civilization resets, but homework persists. The past reminds us that institutional endurance often survives chaos better than armies. 59. A sitting U.S. president once shot and killed a man in a duel. Andrew Jackson engaged in a formal duel and took a bullet before firing back. He survived and returned fire, killing his opponent. He then went on to become president. This did not end his career. Voters accepted it. History treats this casually, but it is wild. Leadership once involved personal gunfights. Today, it would end everything instantly. The past tolerated violence in ways modern society rejects, proving political norms shift dramatically over time. 60. King Charles I of England was exceptionally short and reportedly enjoyed surprising people by hiding in furniture. He would conceal himself in cabinets or behind objects and suddenly appear to amuse guests. This behavior existed alongside ruling a kingdom. History rarely includes these personal quirks. Power does not prevent odd habits. Leaders are strange humans with authority. The contrast between governance and hide-and-seek is jarring. Monarchs signed laws and also hid in chairs. Remembering this makes history less distant and more unsettlingly relatable. 61. Romans used urine as mouthwash because they believed it whitened teeth. Public urine collection points existed, and the liquid was fermented to increase ammonia content. Wealthy Romans gargled it confidently. Doctors approved. Emperors taxed urine as a valuable commodity. Oral hygiene involved other people's waste. History's dental practices were horrifying yet normalized. Clean smiles came from shared bodily fluids. Modern toothpaste suddenly feels miraculous. Rome advanced engineering and law while brushing teeth with pee. Civilization does not move forward evenly. Sometimes progress happens in one area while another stays aggressively disgusting. 62. The longest inaugural speech in U.S. history directly contributed to a president's death. William Henry Harrison spoke for nearly 2 hours outdoors in cold weather without a coat. He wanted to appear strong. He caught pneumonia and died a month later. His presidency lasted only 31 days. History recorded a fatal commitment to public speaking. The speech accomplished nothing memorable except killing the speaker. Leadership learned a harsh lesson about weather and ego. Sometimes strength is staying warm. This event remains a reminder that symbolism can be lethal when leaders ignore basic survival instincts. 63. During World War II, a parrot trained to shout Nazi slogans was seized and auctioned by authorities. The bird's previous owner had taught it to chant propaganda loudly. Officials feared it could spread ideology. The parrot was considered dangerous. It was treated like contraband. History includes moments where animals became political threats. Warfare extended into absurd territory. A talking bird joined the long list of wartime oddities. Intelligence agencies did not laugh. They took it seriously. Paranoia often expands until even parrots are monitored for ideological contamination. 64. The first computer bug was literally a bug. In 1947, engineers found a moth stuck inside a relay of the Harvard Mark II computer. It caused a malfunction. They taped the moth into a logbook and labeled it a bug. The term stuck forever. Modern software errors trace their name to an insect. History's tech language began with wings and wires. Innovation often builds on accidents. Engineers documented the problem carefully, unaware they were naming future frustration. Every glitch today carries the legacy of one unlucky moth meeting early machinery. 65. Vikings used urine to start fires using a special fungus called amadou. The urine helped process the fungus to make it more flammable. This was practical science. Warriors prepared fire starters using bodily fluids and plant knowledge. Survival required creativity. History paints Vikings as brutal, but they were also resourceful chemists. Fire meant warmth, cooking, and survival. Using urine was efficient. Modern camping gear hides its origins. Human ingenuity often begins with uncomfortable solutions. When nature offers limited tools, people use everything available, including themselves. 66. A pope once excommunicated an entire town's caterpillars. The insects were destroying crops, so church officials declared them spiritually condemned. Legal documents were issued. The caterpillars did not respond. Crops continued to suffer. History includes religious authority aimed at insects. This was treated as a serious legal act. Faith and desperation collided. When people lack scientific understanding, symbolism replaces solutions. Excommunication failed to control biology. This episode shows how power structures attempt control even when logic does not apply. Nature ignored paperwork, as it usually does. 67. A king reportedly died from laughing too hard at a joke. Martin of Aragon laughed uncontrollably after hearing a humorous story and suffered a fatal collapse. The event was recorded by contemporaries. Humor ended a reign. History remembers wars and assassinations, but sometimes laughter wins. The absurdity feels fictional. Leadership ended not by betrayal, but comedy. This reminds audiences that death does not follow drama rules. Sometimes it arrives through joy. Even kings are vulnerable to timing, lungs, and jokes told at the wrong moment. 68. The White House once gained a bowling alley in its basement. A U.S. president installed it for personal enjoyment. Politics happened upstairs while bowling pins fell below. History's most powerful building briefly doubled as a recreational center. This detail feels oddly modern. Leaders need distractions. Power does not remove boredom. The presence of a bowling alley humanizes the presidency. While decisions shaped global outcomes, someone was practicing strikes downstairs. The contrast highlights how normal habits persist even inside extraordinary institutions. 69. Ancient Olympic athletes competed completely naked. Clothing was considered restrictive and shameful. Spectators accepted this as normal. Victors were celebrated publicly. Athletic nudity symbolized purity and strength. modern audiences would riot. Cultural norms shift drastically. History's most revered sporting event involved no uniforms at all. The Olympics were about physical perfection, not modesty. This fact challenges assumptions about tradition. What feels inappropriate now was honorable then. Civilization rewrites standards constantly, leaving future generations shocked by what once passed as respectable competition. 70. The Eiffel Tower was originally meant to be temporary. Paris planned to tear it down after 20 years. Critics hated it. Artists protested. It was called an eyesore. Only its usefulness as a radio tower saved it. History almost lost its most famous landmark due to aesthetics and short-term planning. What defines a city today was once considered disposable. Progress sometimes survives by accident. Public opinion shifts unpredictably. Icons often begin as mistakes that simply refuse to go away long enough to become beloved. 71. The first email was sent in 1971, and it contained absolutely nothing important. The message was basically a random string of letters typed to test whether the system worked. No greeting, no purpose, just proof that computers could talk to each other. This moment launched digital communication that now runs the world. Emails handle wars, business, and breakups, but they began as nonsense. History's biggest revolutions often start quietly and stupidly. Nobody celebrated. Nobody predicted spam. One engineer pressed send and accidentally opened the door to inbox stress for the rest of humanity. 72. Cleopatra's Needle in London is older than Cleopatra herself. The massive obelisk was built centuries before she was born and later shipped to England in the 19th century. People assume it relates directly to her, but history slapped her name on it for branding. The monument survived empires, shipwrecks, and relocation. Cleopatra never saw it. Tourists now take photos believing otherwise. History enjoys misleading labels. Artifacts gain fame through association, not accuracy. This obelisk outlived its marketing figure and became a permanent reminder that names often rewrite timelines more effectively than facts. 73. The White House is white because it burned. During the War of 1812, British troops set it on fire, leaving scorch marks across the building. To hide the damage, it was painted white. The name stuck. What sounds symbolic began as cosmetic repair. History turned damage control into identity. The building became a global symbol of American power thanks to a cover-up. War scars were hidden under paint. Many institutions operate the same way. Clean appearances often conceal chaotic origins and uncomfortable reminders of moments when things went very wrong. 74. A famous philosopher once died trying to prove he could hold his breath indefinitely. Ancient sources describe him stopping breathing intentionally to demonstrate control over the body. It worked briefly, then it did not. He collapsed and died, successfully proving nothing except human limits. History records many thinkers pushing boundaries, but this was unnecessary commitment. Philosophy met biology and lost immediately. Ideas did not save him. The pursuit of intellectual dominance ended in silence. Sometimes wisdom dies not from persecution, but from overconfidence in theories that forget basic survival rules. 75. The unicorn is the national animal of Scotland. This mythical creature was chosen to symbolize purity, power, and independence. While other nations picked real animals, Scotland committed fully to fantasy. The unicorn appeared on royal coats of arms and official symbols. History officially endorsed something that does not exist. National identity embraced imagination. This choice confuses tourists and delights locals. It proves symbolism matters more than reality. A fictional animal represents an entire country proudly, reminding the world that history does not require proof when myth does the job better. 76. The first oranges were not orange. They were green. Early oranges came from Southeast Asia and stayed green even when ripe. The color orange was named after the fruit, not the other way around. Europeans later bred brighter varieties and associated the color with ripeness. History reversed logic. Language adapted to agriculture. Today, green oranges look unripe, even though they are normal elsewhere. Assumptions replaced facts. This confusion shows how perception shapes reality. What people expect eventually defines truth, even when nature quietly disagrees. 77. A town in Iceland once elected a beer can as mayor. This was a protest against political dissatisfaction and corruption. Voters preferred an object over candidates. The beer can did not campaign, speak, or promise anything. Officials were embarrassed. The election was symbolic, but the message was clear. Democracy was used to mock leadership. History includes moments where satire becomes official action. When trust collapses, absurdity fills the gap. Citizens chose humor over hope, proving protest sometimes arrives wrapped in aluminum and disappointment rather than speeches. 78. The longest war in history lasted 335 years and killed no one. The Netherlands and the Isles of Scilly technically remained at war due to forgotten paperwork. No battles occurred, no shots were fired, everyone forgot. Peace was signed centuries later once someone noticed. History recorded a war defined entirely by bureaucracy. Conflict existed only on paper. This event shows how formal declarations can outlive relevance. Sometimes hostility persists simply because no one bothers to end it. War can exist quietly, waiting patiently for a signature. 79. Honey never spoils. Archaeologists have found jars of honey in ancient Egyptian tombs that are still edible after thousands of years. Honey crystallizes but does not rot. Bacteria cannot survive in it. History accidentally discovered the perfect food preservative long before science explained it. Ancient people stored sweetness for eternity. Modern expiration dates feel weak in comparison. This fact blurs the line between ancient and modern knowledge. Sometimes early civilizations mastered things we still struggle to replicate without labels and warnings. 80. The first computer was a person. Before machines, computers were human workers hired to perform calculations by hand. Mostly women, they processed data for astronomy, engineering, and navigation. The term described a job, not a device. History quietly erased them when machines took the title. Their labor powered science before electronics existed. Modern technology rests on forgotten people. The word computer now means metal and code, but it once meant patience, pencils, and long hours. Progress renamed the role and moved on without acknowledgement. 81. Bananas are berries, but strawberries are not. Botanically, bananas meet the scientific definition of a berry because they develop from a single flower with one ovary. Strawberries fail because their seeds sit on the outside. History did not prepare anyone for this information. Grocery stores ignore science completely. Language followed appearance, not biology. This fact quietly destroys confidence in basic knowledge. Fruit categories collapse under scrutiny. What feels obvious is wrong. Nature does not care about marketing or breakfast habits. Bananas winning berry status is a reminder that reality often disagrees with common sense. 82. The Great Wall of China is not visible from space with the naked eye. This myth spread through textbooks and pop culture despite being false. Astronauts confirmed it blends into the landscape too well. Highways are more visible. History repeated a comforting exaggeration until it became accepted truth. People liked the idea. Correction came late and quietly. This shows how myths survive because they feel impressive. Once embedded, they resist removal. The wall remains extraordinary without space visibility, but exaggeration often overshadows reality, creating false benchmarks that facts struggle to undo. 83. There is a massive cloud of alcohol floating in space, large enough to make hundreds of trillions of pints of beer. Scientists discovered it near the center of the Milky Way. It consists of ethyl alcohol vapor spanning light years. Humanity cannot reach it. No one can drink it. Still, the universe casually stores infinite disappointment. History now includes cosmic bar trivia. The universe produces alcohol naturally while humans fight over it. This fact reminds audiences how strange reality is beyond Earth. Space is not poetic. It is chaotic, wasteful, and accidentally hilarious. 84. The first vending machine dispensed holy water. In ancient Egypt, Devices released measured amounts of sacred water when coins were inserted. Temples used it to prevent theft and regulate distribution. Religion met automation early. History's first vending technology served faith, not snacks. Engineers prioritized fairness and profit thousands of years ago. This invention quietly connects spirituality and commerce. Modern machines selling soda descend from sacred origins. Progress rarely changes motives, only products. Humans automated belief before convenience, proving innovation often follows money and control, regardless of the era. 85. Octopuses have 3 hearts and blue blood. 2 hearts pump blood to the gills, while 1 pumps it to the rest of the body. Their blood uses copper instead of iron, giving it a blue color. This makes them efficient in cold, low-oxygen environments. Biology outperformed imagination. History ignored how alien Earth already is. Science fiction struggles to match reality. These creatures solve problems evolutionarily. Multiple hearts, flexible intelligence, and camouflage exist quietly in oceans. The planet does not need aliens. It already built them and hid them underwater. 86. A flock of birds once nearly caused the United States to launch nuclear weapons. Radar systems detected what appeared to be incoming missiles. Panic spread. Alarms triggered. Operators prepared responses. Seconds before escalation, someone realized the signals were migrating birds. History narrowly avoided catastrophe due to feathers. Technology misinterpreted nature. Human survival hinged on restraint and verification. This moment exposes how fragile global security systems are. Massive consequences depend on interpretation. The world survived because someone paused. Birds unknowingly became the most effective peacekeepers in history for a brief moment. 87. The first phone book contained only 50 names and no phone numbers. People were expected to know which number belonged to each person. The directory existed simply to show who had phones. Communication was exclusive. History's first network assumed familiarity. Growth came later. This early simplicity contrasts modern complexity. What began as a novelty became a necessity. The phone book grew, then disappeared entirely. Progress loops. New technology starts elite, expands, then vanishes into digital replacement. That first booklet marked the beginning of connection and the end of privacy. 88. William Shakespeare invented over 1,700 words still used today, including bedroom, lonely, and swagger. English lacked terms, so he made them. Audiences accepted it. Language expanded because one writer needed it to work. History credits dictionaries, but culture moves through usage. Shakespeare shaped modern speech casually. People quote him unknowingly. His influence hides in daily conversation. Vocabulary owes debt to creativity. Language evolves not through committees but necessity. One playwright changed how people talk forever by refusing to work with limited options. 89. The first traffic light exploded. Installed in London in the 19th century, it ran on gas and malfunctioned. The explosion injured the police officer operating it. Traffic control debuted violently. History's safety systems began as hazards. Innovation often harms before helping. Cities learned through failure. This incident delayed traffic lights for decades. People feared them. Modern intersections feel normal, but they were born from fire and confusion. Progress rarely arrives smoothly. It stumbles loudly, injures someone, and then quietly improves while everyone pretends that part never happened. 90. A Japanese soldier hid in the jungle for 29 years after World War II ended, refusing to surrender. He believed surrender messages were enemy tricks. He survived on insects and stolen food. Only personal orders from his former commander convinced him. History moved on without him. War ended. Nations rebuilt. One man remained frozen in time. His loyalty became isolation. This story shows how belief can override reality completely. The war ended on paper, but for him, it never did until authority personally released him. 91. The first webcam was created to watch a coffee pot. Scientists at a university were tired of walking to the break room only to find the pot empty. They set up a camera so they could check coffee levels remotely. This was not about security or social connection. It was caffeine management. The camera streamed a live image of the pot for years. History's first webcam served productivity and laziness equally. Global video communication traces back to people avoiding disappointment. Modern video calls exist because someone once cared deeply about not wasting a walk for no coffee. 92. The King of Sweden once escaped assassins by hiding in a pile of manure. Charles V was fleeing enemies when he took cover in animal waste to avoid capture. It worked. His enemies passed by without checking. Royal dignity dissolved instantly. History celebrates bravery, but survival often involves humiliation. Kings do not always die gloriously. Sometimes they live because no one wants to search poop. This moment reminds audiences that power offers no protection without luck. Leadership does not prevent ridiculous situations. Even royalty survives by blending into filth when circumstances demand it. 93. The first novel ever written is considered The Tale of Genji, written in 1008 by a Japanese woman named Murasaki Shikibu. While Europe focused on epics and religious texts, she wrote complex characters and emotional depth. The novel explored relationships, politics, and psychology. History often credits later Western authors, but the genre already existed. Literature matured quietly elsewhere. This challenges assumptions about cultural development. Great ideas do not wait for global recognition. Innovation often happens outside dominant narratives and waits centuries to be acknowledged properly. 94. Early fire extinguishers used gunpowder. In the 18th century, devices exploded barrels of water using small charges to smother flames. Fighting fire involved controlled explosions. This solution seems counterproductive but worked sometimes. Buildings survived if timing was right. History's safety inventions were dangerous experiments. Trial and error defined progress. Firefighters risked additional chaos to stop destruction. Modern extinguishers feel tame in comparison. Early innovation often traded one danger for another. Humanity improves by slow lease, reducing collateral damage rather than eliminating risk entirely. 95. A Roman emperor taxed urine as a source of income. Public urine collection was valuable because it was used for cleaning clothes and tanning leather. Emperor Vespasian charged collectors and defended the tax by stating money does not smell. This phrase survived centuries. History's economy included bodily waste as revenue. Infrastructure relied on human output. Practicality overruled discomfort. Empires funded themselves creatively. Modern taxes feel complex, but ancient systems monetized whatever people produced naturally. Civilization builds finance from unlikely sources and then pretends it was always dignified. 96. The first roller coaster in America was built to distract people from sin. In the late 19th century, it was designed to keep citizens away from alcohol and gambling. Thrill rides were considered wholesome alternatives. Churches supported it. Adrenaline replaced vice. History shows morality campaigns adapting creatively. Entertainment was weaponized against temptation. Today, roller coasters are associated with screaming and nausea, not virtue. But originally, they were moral tools. Society repeatedly rebrands excitement as acceptable when it serves control or distraction. 97. The first email spam was an advertisement for computers. In 1978, a marketer sent a mass message to hundreds of users on a government network. People were annoyed immediately. Complaints followed. Spam was born alongside email. History shows exploitation follows innovation instantly. Convenience invites abuse. Digital annoyance began the moment communication scaled. This event predicted inbox misery decades ahead. The internet did not corrupt purity. It revealed human behavior faster. Advertising adapts instantly. Spam did not evolve slowly. It appeared fully formed and unwanted from the very beginning. 98. The first recorded autograph came from a scribe in 3000 BC complaining about work. Instead of signing proudly, he vented frustration in writing. History's earliest signature expressed burnout. Humanity began documenting itself with complaints. This consistency is comforting. Thousands of years later, people still write notes expressing dissatisfaction. Progress changed tools, not emotions. Work exhaustion predates modern jobs. Civilization advanced, but frustration remained constant. The written record began not with inspiration but annoyance, proving human experience stays remarkably stable across time. 99. The first bicycle was called a hobby horse and had no pedals. Riders pushed themselves along with their feet like children. Adults used them seriously. Streets filled with grown people scooting awkwardly. Balance mattered more than speed. History's transportation experiments often look ridiculous in hindsight. Innovation starts clumsy. Comfort comes later. The bicycle evolved slowly into efficiency. Early adopters accepted embarrassment. Modern cyclists owe gratitude to people willing to look foolish first. Progress depends on public awkwardness tolerated long enough to become normal. 100. The first pizza delivery was made to a king in 1889. A chef delivered a pizza topped with tomato, mozzarella, and basil to Queen Margherita of Italy. She liked it. The pizza was named after her. History's most common food began as royal catering. What started as elite approval became global comfort. Pizza moved from palace to cardboard box. Class barriers collapsed under melted cheese. This story reminds audiences that luxury and simplicity often switch places over time. Today, anyone can order what once required a crown. 101. The first car accident happened in 1891 and did not involve another car. A man driving a motor vehicle struck a pedestrian because roads were not designed for cars yet. People were still learning what vehicles could do and what they should avoid. Traffic laws barely existed. Speed limits were jokes. History's transportation revolution began with confusion and injury. Cars arrived faster than rules. Innovation outran safety. This accident marked the beginning of traffic problems humanity still argues about today. Progress introduced convenience and chaos simultaneously, and pedestrians paid the price first. 102. The first animated film was made in 1908 and featured a simple stick figure. It was called Phantasmagoria and lasted only a few minutes. Audiences were amazed. Drawings moved. That was enough. There was no color, sound, or story complexity. Just motion. History's animation industry began humbly with chalk lines and imagination. Today, animation dominates global entertainment, but it started as an experiment proving drawings could live briefly. Innovation does not require polish at birth. It needs curiosity. Everything from blockbuster films to cartoons traces back to one person asking if pictures could move. 103. The first credit card was not plastic. It was a metal plate used in restaurants during the 1920s. Regular customers were issued these plates so they could dine without cash and pay later. Only wealthy patrons qualified. Credit began as trust among elites. History's financial systems grew from exclusivity to necessity. Convenience expanded slowly. Today, credit cards are everywhere, but they started as heavy symbols of privilege. Debt culture began quietly over dinner. The metal card represented reputation, not credit scores. Modern finance evolved from social trust into algorithms and penalties. 104. The first escalator terrified people so much that companies hired actors to ride it. These performers pretended it was safe and enjoyable. Observers watched humans survive the moving stairs before trying themselves. Fear slowed adoption. History shows people resist new technology until social proof appears. Machines that seem harmless now once required reassurance. The escalator represented uncontrolled motion. Today, it is ignored completely. Innovation often needs performers, not engineers, to gain acceptance. Progress advances when fear is managed through imitation. People follow confidence more than instructions. 105. The first microwave sold in 1947 was taller than a person and weighed hundreds of pounds. It was expensive and designed for commercial kitchens. Heating food with radiation sounded suspicious. Adoption was slow. History's most common kitchen appliance began as industrial equipment. Convenience shrank over time. Technology often starts massive and intimidating before becoming invisible. Microwaves transformed eating habits quietly. They removed time from cooking. What once required planning became instant. This shift altered daily life more than many inventions. Speed replaced ritual, and few questioned it. 106. The first television remote control was called Lazy Bones, and it was connected by a wire. People tripped over it constantly. The idea of not standing up to change channels was considered indulgent. History judged convenience harshly at first. Laziness became innovation. The remote evolved quickly, cutting the wire and reshaping habits. Viewers gained power without movement. Entertainment consumption changed forever. Control shifted from broadcasters to couches. What began as mocked behavior became standard. Modern life runs on similar upgrades that save effort and redefine normal without asking permission. 107. The first video game was created in 1947 and simulated missile defense. It was not for fun, but for demonstration. Entertainment followed later. History's gaming industry started with warfare logic. Technology developed for conflict often becomes play. Screens that once modeled destruction now sell joy. This transition reflects human adaptability. Tools change purpose rapidly. The line between serious and playful blurs easily. What begins as military experiment often ends as leisure. Video games now dominate culture, but their roots sit quietly in Cold War anxiety and electronics labs. 108. The first website went live in 1991 and explained what the World Wide Web was. It was plain, informational, and unexciting. No ads, no images, just instructions. History's largest communication platform began as a guide to itself. The internet introduced itself politely. Growth followed uncontrollably. That simple page led to everything else. Social media, commerce, misinformation, and connection all trace back to that explanation. The web began by telling people what it was before becoming something no one fully controls. 109. The first emoji were created in 1999 in Japan to help express emotion in digital messages. They were simple symbols meant to reduce misunderstanding. History's communication shortcuts grew into a global language. Emojis now replace words entirely. Meaning compresses into images. Tone travels faster. What started as helpful clarification became cultural shorthand. Humans returned to pictographs after thousands of years of writing. Progress looped. The future communicates like the past. Technology often circles back while pretending it invented something new. 110. The last public guillotine execution in France took place in 1939 and caused massive traffic jams. Crowds gathered to watch. Authorities were alarmed by the enthusiasm. Public executions were soon banned. History's appetite for spectacle lingered longer than expected. The guillotine coexisted with radios and automobiles. Progress did not eliminate brutality instantly. Society carried medieval habits into modern times. This event forced reflection. Public punishment lost favor only when it embarrassed leadership. Violence remained acceptable until it looked outdated. 111. Romans flavored wine with lead because it tasted sweet. They boiled grape juice in lead pots, creating a syrup used widely. Chronic lead poisoning followed. Elites suffered mental decline and illness. History suggests this habit weakened Roman leadership over time. Civilization poisoned itself for flavor. Science did not intervene. Pleasure outweighed caution. This slow damage shows how cultural practices can undermine entire societies quietly. Rome did not fall from one cause, but drinking poison daily certainly did not help. Sometimes collapse begins with taste preferences. Before you scroll away, let that sink in. History is not a neat timeline of smart decisions and noble leaders. It is chaos, accidents, ego, bad ideas, and humans confidently doing the wrong thing for centuries. If even half of these facts broke your brain, that means history is doing its job. Now do your part. Hit like because your brain survived this journey. Subscribe so you never miss the next batch of dumb decisions humanity somehow lived through. Share this with someone who thinks history is boring. And comment below. Which of these facts made you pause and say, there is no way this is real? Also tell us which era you think was the dumbest overall. And before you go, click one of the videos on screen right now because trust us, history somehow gets even worse from here.